All right, let's go ahead and move on. Up next, we have the Browns and Steelers game. The Browns 4-3, Steelers 3-3, coming off a bye. The over/under is 42, and the Browns are favored by 3.5. Now, Ben Roethlisberger is 23, 2-1 as a starter versus Cleveland in the regular season. But if you include the postseason, the Steelers have actually lost two straight, and if they drop another one here, then the Browns would be beating the Steelers for three straight matchups for the first time since the 1980s. Now, injury wise, Baker might try and give it a go this week, but we will more than likely see his capable backup in Case Keenum. This should also mark the return of Nick Chubb, so a reduced role for the 1 week wonder of Dearness Johnson. Other notable names here that are on the questionable injury report include Odell Beckham Jr., Malik Jackson, Denzel Ward, Jadeveon Clowney, Jarvis Landry, and Donovan Peoples-Jones. For the Steelers, Chase Claypool, Melvin Ingram, Ben Roethlisberger, and Carlos Davis. But Ben's been playing through that hip injury, and that pec injury. But we are going to go ahead and pass it off to Jake. What do you think is going to happen, Browns and Steelers?
Yeah, I think the injuries are going to kind of come back and bite the Browns in the butt on this one. Actually, let me start that over again. I changed my mind. I don't think so. So in this one, even though the Browns have a ton of injuries, I think they're going to get a few key guys back in this one. So I'm going to take the Browns in this game. Over under, I went back and forth a lot. I wouldn't necessarily, especially with my record this week, take my judgment on that at all. So I'm just going to say the over on this one. I think it's possible that we see both teams hit 21. Maybe the Browns kind of get a feeling with another week of Case Keenum back there practicing with everybody and getting Odell and Nick Chubb back. Maybe the Browns could find the end zone a couple times. The Browns defense, though, still has a really, really good rushing defense. So for the Steelers, right now, they're really trying to move the ball through Najee and Deontay Johnson. I think Najee is going to have a tougher game this week. Deontay, I would definitely look to start him. He could have a great game. They're going to definitely be needing to feed him if they want to move the ball and actually have a chance to win. Pay attention to Chase Claypool's hamstring. It looks like he was limited in practice on Wednesday, but hamstrings always scare me, especially when they're coming back. So I wouldn't necessarily start him this week. I'm not too excited about the fantasy options in this game. With Case Keenum back there, I don't see a huge upside potential for a ton of touchdowns. Nick Chubb, obviously, you're starting him. Dearness Johnson, if you want to start him, I think he could definitely have that relieving back role, kind of like what Kareem Hunt has. So it's all about if he takes advantage of those opportunities, which if he has a game remotely like he did last week, I think he does. But yeah, I'll take the Browns in this one. Take the over. Not happy about that one. But Tyler, what do you think is going to happen in this game?
Yeah, this is an interesting one. I think that anytime you have a situation where you can get a 3.5 point line on a team starting, what's essentially, Mike said it well, a capable backup, or I think even more favorably for the Steelers side of things, if Baker tries to play, because he has just not looked like himself. I would have to see Baker go back out there, complete some balls that, Baker of 4 or 5 weeks ago would have completed for me to say, okay, Baker's actually healthy. This is an injury that a lot of medical experts have said that Cleveland should shut him down for the year for the sake of his health, because this is something that is going to take a long time to heal. It's something that is going to make him kind of a liability out on the field. And, we saw the last game that he played, a simple routine tackle, hitting his shoulder on the ground, rolled in and out of socket. It's just not, it's not a great situation. So for all accounts and purposes, I'm looking at this as though Case Keenum is going to be on the field, because even if he doesn't start the game, I could see him coming in relief as the game goes on. Anytime you give me 3.5 points, backup quarterback, pretty decent defense, veteran quarterback, even though Ben isn't that guy, I'm going to find myself on the Steelers side of things. The over-unders, again, where I think it gets interesting. I personally think because Cleveland has Nick Chubb back, as long as Nick Chubb plays, I'm going to take the under. I think that Cleveland's going to try to play a lot of ball control football. 42 is a really, really low under. Obviously, not as low as what we'll see later with the Bears and 49ers, but 42 is relatively low. I think Vegas understands that these are two teams that they want to hand the ball off. Obviously, the Steelers get Najee involved in the passing game, but the running backs are the feature players in this game for both these teams. And I could just see it being one of those, kind of sloppy 20-14 games, something like that. I actually have the Steelers winning if you wanted to go ahead and bet a money line parlay, but on these teams outside of the running backs, I mean, Deontay's in your lineup. I actually don't mind Claypool if he plays. I think that Pittsburgh is going to hand the ball off a lot like they usually do. And I think Juju not being out there just gives the other two receiving options a lot more clarity. I think one of the best things that could happen for the Steelers roster, as far as from a fantasy point of view, is kind of having one of those guys out, just because the other two are going to feast. I think it's a lot like what we saw with Tampa last week. Evans was able to have a monster game, and it's kind of what we deal with every single week, right? One of the three between AB, Godwin, or Evans is going to have a down week. You never know which one it's going to be. With one of those guys removed, both guys have a solid game. And I think that's kind of what we're seeing in Pittsburgh at this point going forward, unless you're playing. I honestly, I can't think of a defense that I wouldn't want to at least flex Deontay and Claypool against. I think both of them are going to have enough targets to go around. Obviously, Najee's in your lineup every week. I don't think either quarterback would be one that I would be excited to play, because obviously with an under picked by me, I don't see a lot of points being scored. But other than that, yeah, I feel pretty good about that. What about you, Matt?
Pretty much, I'm pretty much just going to mirror your thoughts on this game specifically. I believe the Steelers will cover. I do still have the Browns winning the game, but that doesn't really matter according to the spread here too. I just think 3.5 in a game that I think is going to be very, very close. This to me looks like way more of like a field goal type of game, boring ground and pound. I trust Cleveland to commit less turnovers than I do the Steelers. So from that standpoint alone, I don't trust the Steelers offensive line. And Myles Garrett, he's still there. I'm sure he'll get HGH tested again after this week, depending on whether he's wearing sleeves or not. So the Browns defense is still going to be stingy. Steelers obviously still have a very solid defense there. I just think it's going to be a very boring game overall, but it's in a classic AFC North tradition. This is what the AFC North has been known for. These, control the clock, great defense, who controls, the line of scrimmage, who controls the field position. And I think it ends up coming down to a field goal at the very end. So I'm going to take the home team here in this game to win, but I'll take the under. I'll take Steelers to cover. And you guys pretty much covered all the fantasy aspects of things. There's nobody really that, obviously monitor the injury reports for Jarvis Landry, Odell, but last week was by apocalypse. I don't think you really want to start either one of those, really, outside of the running backs on Cleveland and Deontay and Claypool on the Steelers side of things. So, yeah, you guys did a great job. That's all I got.
Matt, is Dearness Johnson truly a one-week wonder, or does he usurp Kareem Hunt style role?
I would personally fade him this week. And the reason why I do believe Nick Chubb is going to bounce back and have a very consistent game here. And as great as Dearness was last week, the Browns like a two-back system, and they like the two-back system based on different role play. So Dearness is basically, the way they used him was essentially another Nick Chubb. So if Nick Chubb is back, yes, I'm sure they'll rotate him in just a little bit to keep, since Chubb's coming off of an injury, try to keep him fresh. But I don't believe he's going to be getting the catches that like Kareem Hunt regularly gets. So I don't have a ton of faith in him. It's possible. Anything's possible. But in a game that there's a lack of points scored, I'm just not going to, I wouldn't bet on it or put any faith in it.
Yeah. Yeah. I think the interesting thing here is Demetric Felton, actually. I think Matt kind of nailed it. They tend to like having kind of two guys with two different roles. And Dearness does play that Nick Chubb role to an extent. Obviously, I think the biggest issue that we're going to run into with Dearness comes down to how much they trust him in pass protection. I think that's the biggest thing. That third down back role is somebody that you have to trust in pass protection. It's the reason that we see a lot of rookies when they first come in not playing on third down. It tends to be a veteran. It tends to be a guy that can keep your quarterback safe. And with the Browns' current quarterback situation, especially if Baker's out there, keeping his blind side clean is paramount for them. I think they trust Felton in pass protection. We saw him playing a majority of the third downs last week. I don't think that's going to change. I think Chubb will get out there a little bit on third down, a little more than he would if Kareem Hunt was in. But Dearness, he's one of those guys that I by no means would drop him, but I would hold on to him for a week, try to sit him out of your lineup unless you absolutely don't have a choice, and just watch and see what happens. If Dearness does maybe take that third down role, maybe all of a sudden they saw enough out of him last week and he's been with the team long enough that they trust him in protection and they think he's a more dynamic back than Felton and they want to put him in there. But for me, if that's what they believed, he would have been playing those third downs last week and he really wasn't. So just an observation.
All right. And then just to wrap up the picks here, I'm going to go ahead. I just think that the Browns are, even with no Baker Mayfield, I think that the Browns are a better team than the Steelers by more than a field goal. So I'm going to go ahead and take the Browns still. I am going to side with you guys, though, and take the under. So Browns and under for me. Thank you for listening to this little highlight of the 2 Minute Drill podcast. If you want to follow along to other games, here's a playlist for you. If you want to listen to the show in its entirety, show links are in the description. Make sure you're subscribed to the YouTube channel, and we'll see you on the next one. Peace.